we're now talking 10 years after 1980. We're talking about 1990, right? And so I start receiving the International UFO Reporter, and I read where these two fellows, Kevin Randall and Donald Schmidt, were reopening the investigation of the Roswell case. I said, great, because I hadn't heard any more about it. So they had a couple update articles in there. And one of the stories involved in the case was that the craft and bodies were discovered by a group of archaeologists from the University of Pennsylvania in Philadelphia. Well, geez, I was living in Huntington Valley right next to Philadelphia. So I called up Kevin Randall out of the blue. I said, Kevin, what are you doing about trying to find the archaeologists from the University of Pennsylvania? He said, well, we interviewed a couple from somewhere else. They didn't know anything and they haven't really done anything. So I said, look, I have 2 degrees in anthropology. I was a physical anthropology major, went for my doctorate at the University of Toronto. Came up short. I was what do they call you? Had your coursework done, but I didn't have a dissertation topic. I said, look, I've got experience in anthropology, archaeology. Let me go down to the University of Pennsylvania and see what I can find out down there. So I did. I took the train into town one Saturday. This was like 1991 now. And I was looking for the archaeologists. That was my mandate at that point, was to try to find out who the archaeologists were. And we had a couple leads, two of which I got from William Moore, the original investigator. And he gave me two names of archaeologists on staff at the university there, and I interviewed them both in person. One of the names was a fellow named Bernard Wales, and he said that he didn't know anything about it. What am I talking about, and how did I get his name? I said, well, one of the investigators gave it to me. The other fellow was a archaeologist named John Cotter, Cotter, and he was famous for working at the so-called Clovis site. There's a whole tool assemblage named the Clovis points, and he worked the Clovis site, archaeological site near Portales, New Mexico. And to make a long story short, he was involved. He knew all about the case, but he declined to at the very end. I said, okay, well, what was it? He said, well, what it was a crash of a V-2 rocket carrying a chimpanzee. I said, oh my goodness, this is not right. This is not right. And so I thanked him. And later on, I was able to learn from a female former graduate student who had received an MA in archaeology from Pennsylvania that it was indeed John Cotter who was at the site, because he told one of his classes all about it. So that's how I got involved, besides just reading the books, right? In
So
1991, the same year that I became involved in the investigation, I joined the Randall and Schmidt team. Um, the They published a book called UFO Crash at Roswell. This is the book that jump started. Remember now, there was a 10-year gap between the Roswell incident book from 1980 to the Randall Schmidt book, UFO Crash at Roswell in 1991. 11-year gap. Well, this book jump started worldwide interest in the subject.
again,
And I always point to that 1991 book as being what jump started everybody's interest, because it expanded the knowledge base so much that the number of witnesses interviewed, the whole ball of wax. And that's when I became an active investigator with the Randall Schmidt team in the Roswell case, 1991.
So, is there any evidence that actually points, any kind of physical evidence that you have seen that points that this craft that crashed in Roswell was of extraterrestrial origin?
There's no physical evidence, Ryder. That's the one thing lacking in the case. We have no incontrovertible piece of physical evidence, like a piece of the ship, uh, in private hands. We we do know that the all that stuff is in governmental hands, and for the longest period of time. And I'll explain where that stuff is today. But in private investigations, whether it's the Randall Schmidt team or the Schmidt Carey team or the Stanton Friedman William Moore team, we have no incontrovertible piece of physical evidence. And by incontrovertible, I mean that everybody agrees, oh yes, that's a piece of physical evidence. We don't have that. But what we do have, and this is with a Carey team, with the Carey and Schmidt team, I'm sorry. This is where we have, if you can envision a football field, okay, envision the Denver Broncos football field stadium, 100 yards long, right? It's 100 yards from goal to goal. Well, when the Carey Schmidt team entered to continue a proactive investigation in 1998, because in 1997 they had the 50th anniversary of the Roswell crash. It garnered worldwide interest in Roswell, New Mexico, the case. But what happened was, after the 50th anniversary in 1997, most of the investigators left the field. That was it. They said, well, there's nothing more to learn. Well, Don Schmidt and I, because we both belong to QFOS, and at one of the meetings we said, let's keep our investigation going. So Schmidt and I teamed up in 1998 to continue a proactive, and I underline that word, proactive, investigation of the case. Now, what that means is that we weren't just sitting here like I'm sitting in my office at home waiting for something to come in. We were out there shaking the tree for witnesses. That was our mandate. So when we took over the case ourselves, the football was at the Denver Broncos 50. It was on the 50-yard line, the football. As we sit here today, Don Schmidt and I have moved the football down to the 1-yard line. Okay, Denver's about to score. We moved the ball down to the 1-yard line. All we are missing is a piece of physical evidence to put it over the goal. So that's an analogy. I hope your viewers understand. We moved the case so far from the 50 down to the 1, and we've gone as far as we can, Ryder. The only thing we're missing is a piece of physical evidence. We have in our mandate was to track down as many living witnesses as we could, starting, Randall and Schmidt started around 1990. Carey and Schmidt started around 1998. Carey and Schmidt, we are sitting on over 600 first and second hand witnesses. There's no other case that's so thoroughly investigated as our case. Over 600 first and second hand witnesses to this one event. Now, all of the first hand witnesses, I have to tell you, are dead now. They're all, as far as we know. There may be someone out there that we never, contacted or tried to contact. There may be someone out there still alive, but we don't know it. But all the ones that we interviewed are gone. And even the secondhand witnesses, like children of the first handers, even they're starting to go too. A number of those have already passed away. So we're sitting here. We, there's no place further that we've got the case nailed, Ryder, from the crash site to when the wreckage and bodies were taken to the Roswell Army Airfield in Roswell, when they were flown to Fort Worth, when they were then flown to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Dayton, Ohio, to at some point they were transferred to Area 51, and today they're not at Area 51 anymore, but we know where they're at. We know where the wreckage is at. We know where the bodies are at. And I'll tell you that.
Bigelow Aerospace, right?
Yes, yes, absolutely.